It was just a regular day at the Wonderball Academy. The Wonderballs had just recently ended practice for the day, and there was now a weekend. The whole team was getting ready to spend time. Soren was going to be with Rainbow Dash in Pulmonville since they had now been dating for about a year. Even though the others had said goodbye to each other, but there was only one member left, and that was in fact Surprise. Surprise had normally had a lot of time to spend with her boyfriend, or at least her ex-boyfriend. For about 6 months ago, Surprise had a boyfriend that they lived in Baltimore. She was very happy to be with him, and they even had this long distance relationship, and it was working perfectly, even despite they didn't see each other so often as they wanted to, since ever since Surprise was part of the Wonderballs and that she sometimes had to practice several couple of days in a week, and that she had sometimes some shows that she appears in various places around the kingdom. And it made it almost sometimes that she wanted, which she wished, she can just go back to Baltimore to spend time with her boyfriend. But one day, she was able to do so. For 6 months ago, she went back to Baltimore to surprise her boyfriend with a visit surprise. But as she came to his apartment, she heard a voice behind the door, and it was at first in fact her boyfriend's. But then she heard a female voice. But at first she didn't put much attention to that. After all, he had a lot of female friends in Baltimore, and but there was something about this moment that she had a feeling that something was off. Because as they were talking, they were both laughing about something, but she couldn't even hear exactly behind the door. So she only had two options: either knock on the door and ask her to be inside, or and leave and come back maybe the next day or maybe later. But she decided to knock on the door, and as he was talking, laughing at the door when he opened it, and everything stopped when he saw Surprise by the door. Surprise? What are you doing here? I thought you were over in Baltimore, back in the academy for training. And she explained that she had a day off and she wanted to come out to see him. And by a surprise visit, when she did notice there were a mare on the couch, but they were nothing much suspicious about her meeting there. They were just having a glass or something that they were just drinking, and they were just talking. But when she realized this was in fact one of his old friends that he had been knowing for years, and she asked him how things been between their friendship. But this mayor then said, "Friends? No, I'm not his friend anymore. I'm his fiancée." That shocked Surprise. His fiancée? But I am his girlfriend, she said, a little bit angry tone, for some big shocking. Oh, you hadn't even told her yet? She smiled and laughed in the background. I'm sorry, Surprise, but I'm sorry if you'd have to find out about this way. But, and yes, it's the truth. We have been engaged for at least about a month by this time. And I'm sorry as I was supposed to be telling you earlier, but it slipped my mind and I forgot about it to telling you. And I didn't even expect you to be back so soon and to find out about it. I'm sorry, Surprise. But I did like you. We had a lot of fun, but I realized that this long distance relationship was not even gonna work in the long run. I was still hope that maybe one day we could end up married and have a family. But after my friend here, or my fiancée, she expressed her feelings to me, and after I had realized I have feelings for her as well for years, but we don't realize it. So I'm sorry, Surprise. But then he closed the door, and she stood there for only a few more seconds before she ran away. And that was 6 months ago. She was still hadn't even moved on from her hard breakup. She couldn't believe it. Her boyfriend had been cheating on her for a whole month and even been engaged with another mayor. Despite that, they were having a great time together. But she realized that at that point, if he had been seeing that mayor for a whole month or perhaps even longer, what if their relationship at that point before he broke up has been some sort of charade or some smokescreen or something like that? When she told her team members about this, they were surprised. They were shocked, the more to say it. They tried to comfort her and said she will find somebody else to be with. But Surprise had said with a little bit crying tone, I will never find anyone like him or any pony like that. I don't want to date any pony anymore. And there was even some talk about her leaving the team. And that was the time when Rainbow had joined when she had considered to leave the Wonderbolts. Even when were talking to Spitfire in her office. Surprise, is there something I can do for you? Yes, have been thinking about reassign from the team permanently. Wait, Surprise, is this because of your boyfriend? You should let him do this time. You shouldn't let his breakup for you with you to make you end leaving the team. You're a great friend to us. But if you want some time off from the Wonderbolts, I will grant you at least 2 weeks of permission leave. But if you don't want to consider to be part of the team anymore after 2 weeks, I will grant your wish to leave the Wonderbolts. But then, don't tell this to any of the team members because it will only make panic. And Surprise agreed, and she promised that she would never tell the others. But when the others asked why Surprise had even been back for maybe a couple of days, Spitfire mentioned she is taking on some vacation time because she was a bit stressed and she was tired and she needs some vacation. And that was something the others could in fact accept it. After all, they have been training sometimes maybe for several hours per day and sometimes for a couple of days. And even having practice even extra if there was an upcoming show. So the others could relate to that. So during this time, Surprise went to some old friends who lived in Trottingham. In fact, Trottingham was actually her birth where she was born. So she went literally back home. She still spent time with her family and some close friends that she still had in contact with. But her family and her friends was at that point not as much aware of the much details about her breakup with her ex-boyfriend. But when she went back home, she revealed to her family and to some close friends what happened. Her parents was equally shocked, but her father was a little bit angry and almost upset. He said, I will go to Baltimore to have a serious talk with this stallion. But Surprise told him not to do that. It is not even worth it anymore because she doesn't even want to be with him or have nothing to do with him. After all that, she was really hurt about this breakup, despite knowing she would have us a great time. She had such a great time with her ex-boyfriend and all that. Even her mother might say, well, sweetie, you might find some pony night one day when you least expect it. Even though she hasn't even known it. But her mother had right. Because only a few days later, when she went out with her friend Violet. Violet and Surprise has been childhood friends ever since they were like 5 years old. They did all kinds of things together, like pranks against their friends and family, something like that, and they were like sisters. They were inseparable. They remained in close contact ever since Surprise moved from Trottingham to be part of the Wonderbolts. But when she did mention to Velvet about her breakup and that her thoughts to leaving the Wonderbolts and perhaps even coming back home, Velvet was very shocked. Since they had been such good friends, close friends over the years, she was very surprised that Surprise herself had even considered to leaving the Wonderbolts. Because when she was so young, like 10 to 12, she had always dreamed to be part of Wonderbolts. She would do anything. She would do anything to be part of the Wonderbolts reserves and to one day to be a Wonderbolt. And she even still today remember the day when Surprise told her family and her friends that she had been accepted as a full member of the Wonderbolts. It was her biggest, happiest day ever. And now she has considered to leave the Wonderbolts after have fulfilled her childhood dream to be part of those top acrobatic league teams. There was something beyond that. But Velvet explained, or at least told what she believed about this. It was just crazy idea to even think about it. She even asked how many others about the team members knows about it. And she explained only Spitfire knows about it. She had even told the others because if she did, it would have only caused a lot of panic. And that same afternoon, Velvet had an idea to maybe to try to make Surprise to forget all about her serious breakup and try to move on, maybe try to figure out if it was possible that she could find anybody else to be with. So she decided to take with Surprise to this comedy club that was nearby to her home. It has a good reputation for having a great time spot for, even though they had been there at least a few times before. So Surprise wasn't even a big surprise that they went there. So when she went there, she was still not very much happy. But after a while, though, well, maybe in half hour to an hour, both were starting laughing, and for first in a long time, Surprise seems to be having moving on and has forgotten about her breakup. As he was sitting there, Surprise asked Velvet if she had been dating any particular pony since she moved away. And Velvet said that she hasn't, or at least she did try dating this stallion for about a couple of weeks, but it wasn't dating in serious. She then tried dating this mare. That surprised her, because Surprise was not even aware that Velvet was into both mare and stallions. But Velvet said that she had recently thought about it. There was nothing that she was recently had even considered though. So Surprise asked her if she still was dating this mare. But sadly she wasn't. They turned out this mare was in fact not even a relationship like previously, but they both agreed there wasn't any spark between them. But they had a good time just been dating, so despite that. But then, while they were sitting there having a good time, Velvet asked if Surprise would have even considered being dating a mare, or at least try it. Even though Surprise herself was not even considered that from the first. But after a while, she thought maybe if there was if she had an opportunity and if she know what any beautiful mare to spend time with, so she thought perhaps. But at the moment, she wasn't even aware of any particular mare to spend time with. And that was a good answer for Velvet. But after they left the comedy club, they were having some. They were laughing, talking about some of the shows, and even then, Velvet asked if Surprise wanted to maybe go somewhere to have something to drink. There was this small diner that was nearby, which had serving good apple cider and have a good apple pies. And having had been after being on the club for maybe about 2 hours, it had made them both quite hungry, so they agreed. And there, they had just still talked about its performance, and even then, even then, Velvet once again mentioned that if she if Surprise would have considered being dating a mare, which mare would she even consider being dating? Even after that ask that question, that Surprise was was a little bit surprised, and but she was even silent for a brief moment. She was thinking, and the only option that he came up with was either Velvet, since they have been good friends, but at the same time, it would have been less strange been dating her old friend. But after realized that some of our other friends had been dating their friends, and and at least one of her friends, in fact, got married with her, but this one their other friends, and so she thought, why not? So she mentioned at least Velvet is the only opponent that she can come up with. Velvet just smiled and said if she would be willing to maybe try to date her, she would be at least open to try it. Surprise actually in fact said yes to that. Why not? Give it a try. So they actually started dating after that day. Even though that surprise went some reason she hadn't even told her parents when Velvet came over to spend time with her, or at least pick her up on their picnic date, when their mother, when surprised mom and dad were well surprised that their daughter was now dating her oldest friend. But they were supportive because Surprise did mention that she wasn't even sure if this dating were gonna work last pretty long, but just she wanted to see if it was had any spark. After all, they had now only been dating for at least for about less than a week. And they had a great time on their picnic. They were giggling, talking, they were doing some funny jokes to each other, and even though despite having known each other for so long, for more than 20 years, Surprise realized Velvet maybe is the one that she had been waiting for. So she decided maybe this was a worth a try to be with Velvet. After all, they have been know each other. She can trust her, and she knows Velvet would never cheat on her with any pony, despite knowing that you've known her for years. But after 2 weeks, Surprise had to go back to the Wonderful Academy. But Velvet was a little bit sad, though, of course. But she agreed she would be able to see her as soon as possible again, though. But after a while, when just only about 2 days after Surprise had returned, Spitfire had asked if she could come to her office so that they could talk. She then asked, "Now, Surprise, have you thought about your consideration of leaving the team, or have you decided to do it? I had the papers already filled in, if the paper ready to be filled." After the brief silence, and surprised and smiled and said, "In fact, I have been thinking about that, and I decided not to sign the papers." "So you're decided to stay in the team then?" "Yeah." And then Surprise told Spitfire the very main reason why she decided to stay. "So you have found some opponent to be with, and is the main reason?" Surprise just nodded and said yes. "Well, I'm happy for you, and it would have been a little bit hard if you leave in the team, consider how we had to try to find a replacement for you, and that could have taken a long time, at least. But I know at least the team wouldn't been happy if you left the team." But then Surprise said maybe we shouldn't even tell them that I had even considered that. Surprise, along with Spitfire, thought that maybe was for the best. And she was right, because if they had been told either before or after, there may still have been a ton of questions like, why did you even want to leave the team? I thought you had a great time. We thought you had this was your childhood dream to be part of Wonderbolts. Something like that. But there were a lot of questions in Surprise's mind that still were puzzling. One of us, in fact, mainly focused on her ex-boyfriend. First of all, if there were any signs of unhappiness between them, why pretend to be such happy for long, or even saying that this relationship was working, but at the same time going behind her back with someone Mare that he had known for so long time? If he wasn't even happy anymore, or even sure that he was in love with her anymore, why not have just ended there earlier, not right at that point when she came to see him? But at least she was happy to move on And she hasn't even been in contact with her ex-boyfriend since. And that is something she doesn't even regret at all for that point. Because even just only about a week after that surprise returned, she had told her friends, especially her team members, about her new relationship. And they were really surprised that in fact she has not been dating a new man, been dating, but it was in fact a mayor. Not only that, it was also a very old friend of hers. They were just surprising, but they were actually supportive. But by a random point, Soren went with Spitfire out for just having something to drink when they both talking about what happened Spit when Surprise went to Nottingham for about 2 weeks. It then is slipped. Spitfire mentioned that Surprise had thought about leaving the team. When Soren heard that, he couldn't even believe it. Because just the next day, the others had also been told from Soren. And when Surprise came to the academy, just smiling, humming to herself when they suddenly they were hard talking in the locker room. When she went inside, it became quietly silent. They all turned around and looked at her. First, she thought maybe if she had something in her face or if she had stepped on something that was smelling. But when she asked if something was wrong, they actually asked her, "Have you thought about leaving the team, Surprise? At least before?" said said Fleetfoot. "How did you even know about that?" she said. "Soren told us." Spitfire then walked up and said that it slipped her mind and when she was talking to him. But at this point, Surprise wasn't even mad at Spitfire. She realized that at some point this would have eventually come out and the others would know about it. Or at least she may have told them herself at this point. She even said that to Spitfire she wasn't even mad because she realized at some point this would have come out eventually, even somehow. So she confirmed that she had the thoughts about leaving the team. That was about 6 months ago, just after that her ex-boyfriend left her, or they broke up with her. But now she has a new girlfriend to be with. She had now found her true meaning that she find a new source of happiness. And now she was not going to even consider leaving the team. It was just a bad joke or bad thoughts for herself. And the others accepted it. And they didn't ask more about it. For the next couple of weeks, or at least a couple of months about the fact, the relationship between Surprise and Velvet remains solid strong. But one day, during this holiday, just shortly after Heartswarming Eve, both Velvet and Surprise in fact went to Baltimore for just some random visit some of her other friends who lived there. But what happened when they were just walking on the street? They in fact ran into Surprise's old boyfriend and his new wife. And it turned out sometimes after they had been broken up with her, they in fact got married. But she wasn't even mad about him anymore. They actually just saw each other and just made a head nod and walked past each other. They didn't even say the word. And that was in fact the only time she's seen him. And she was just glad that he had moved on with his life and that she had moved on herself. Even despite this, even Velvet had asked if she regretted to have left her boyfriend. But Surprise laughed and said, "No, I don't regret it. What he did was unforgettable, but I have forgiven him for what happens, but I prefer not have any contact with him." despite we saw in only a few days ago in the Baltimore, but despite that, I don't want to see it anymore. I moved on. I'm happy with you now, Velvet. Velvet was really happy to see that Surprise actually had even considered not even talk to him anymore. Velvet and Surprise was really happy to be with the one that they loved most of, because what else would have happened if Velvet had even considered to be with Surprise if she had even told her or even asked her? But after they had been dating for about 3 years, Velvet went with Surprise to Manhattan for a couple of days vacation before going back to Trottingham. When they, in fact, when Velvet proposed to Surprise, and Surprise said yes immediately. They decided to have their wedding in Trottingham. They invited the entire Wonderbolt Academy team and some of their close friends from back home. Surprise had even asked Spitfire to be her bridesmaid, and she said yes. Even after the party, after the wedding itself, every pony has a great time. There were just a lot of food, there was a lot of dancing, and a lot of music. Even both families could see how happy Surprise and Velvet were together. They were at this point when Velvet knew she had made the right choice. And she even knew Surprise was in fact her soulmate. If Surprise had even returned back home, she may never been found out but the true love was there in all places. But after they had been married for about 4 years, they decided they wanted to start a family. And since then, ever since, ever since they got married, Surprise actually moved from Cloudesdale to Ponyville. After all, it was the closest thing, the closest place to release the Academy, and Velvet also moved to Ponyville because it would have been a bit difficult for her traveling back and forward between Cloudesdale and Ponyville, or at least Trottingham. And it would have been very difficult for Velvet to live in Cloudesdale since she is a unicorn and not a Pegasi. But after they have been living there for about a couple of years, they want to start a family. So they went to this local orphanage in Ponyville and they actually adopted two daughters of their own. Both was really happy to have a Wonderbolt as a mother, and that was something they both actually agreed to do so. Because they both their daughters was in fact Pegasi, sisters, and both looked up to both Rainbow and Surprise as their idol. And they wanted the the most they wanted to be in their whole life was to be a Wonderbolt, like their mother and their idol. Even after all this, even after all this, Velvet was really happy that Surprise came back home for their 2 weeks. And but if Surprise had even came back home for their 2 weeks, she may never have even had met her true love at the point. Even Velvet may have even found somebody else to be with. At that point, that even then, Surprise may never have found a soulmate and never had this such, had missed out so much joy. She had even may have even left the Wonderballs entirely. And who knew what else she would have been doing afterwards. But she was just happy to have found her true love and her soulmate in her old friend Velvet. Even Velvet of all, she was really excited to know that her true love was in fact in her old friend Surprise all along. If she hadn't even told Surprise about this, she may have missed out her true joy of happiness with Surprise. And this is how Surprise and velvet for the true love got a big family together. The end.